Top of the day to you from West Palm Beach. This is The Truth on November the 15th, 2025. We're just 12 days away from Thanksgiving and 6 weeks from Christmas. My, how time flies. We're brought to you today by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy, and we come to you on the John Fredericks Media Network. You can also watch us right now on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, X, and Getter Live. Go to either one of those channels and search for John Gordon Truth. You can watch our live stream because we've got a lot of graphics. We've got some video we'd like to share with you. I'll describe it while we go for our radio listeners. We're going to be talking about James O'Keefe. We're going to talk about the Epstein files. That story just won't go away. We're going to continue our coverage of Charlie Kirk's tragic assassination and all of the sketchy stuff that went on that fateful day, September the 10th, 2025 in Utah. And this time next week, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to be coming to you live from Dallas, Texas and Dealey Plaza at approximately 12:30. Actually, we're going to retrace JFK's steps from that fateful day. And we're going to talk to journalists, authors, scholars who have researched JFK's assassination. In fact, I'm going to do a deep dive for 3 days. I'm going to be attending the JFK Historical Society Symposium held in Dallas, and then we'll be in Dealey Plaza at 12:30 on Saturday, November the 22nd, 2025, 63 years to the minute from when JFK was assassinated. We'll also retrace Oswald's steps. You'll want to see that on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, X Spaces, and Getter Live, so you can see the video and the live stream that goes along with it. Meanwhile, if you are listening to us on the radio, I sure do wish you'd do us a little favor and go to one of those social media spots that you like, that I just mentioned, YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, X, Getter. Subscribe, like us if you do, and watch and interact with us. You can do that on Getter. Last week we had over 12,000 people tuned in on Getter and interacting with us. We'd love to break that record. That was a new high for us. So the program is growing, and only you can make that happen for us. Well, last night I had a wonderful opportunity. My wonderful wife Helen and I were fortunate to be invited to the Citizens Journalist Award ceremonies at none other than Mar-a-Lago, and it was hosted by James O'Keefe. You may remember James O'Keefe as the guy who goes undercover and gets people to tell secrets that they don't otherwise want to tell, usually to their own damnation. And we saw a wide range of clips last night that James played for us. You know, I've met James twice, and I followed him a lot. And he reminds me a lot of Charlie Kirk. They were actually good friends. In fact, James said that they either spoke or texted each other every day. And that's not surprising to me. They're about the same age. And I also met James O'Keefe Jr., who is James's dad, a delightful, nice, wonderful gentleman. And he told me that James graduated from school with a 4.3 average. He was an Eagle Scout. And I can tell you, he's a fearless, principled individual. I pray for his safety because he's made a lot of enemies, but tough, rightfully so. He has gone after corruption in government, and I just appreciate what he's done so much. He was at Mar-a-Lago last night. It was a fundraiser for his 501c3. It's called Citizens Journalist Society, and they recognized a number of young YouTubers and citizen journalists. Those people included, and they selected their first annual Citizen Journalist of the Year award. They recognized Nick Shirley, Savannah Hernandez, Nate Friedman, Cam Higbee, Anthony Rubin, and Andy No. And You may have seen many, or if not most of those individuals at the White House with President Trump just a couple of weeks ago as they did a deep dive into Antifa. No one has worked harder on pulling the curtain back on Antifa perhaps than Nick Shirley. These guys actually go out and they are on scene at prominent events. I don't know that you'd call them events, certainly current events where people are acting out, like protest in Portland and riots in Atlanta and Washington, D.C. And Andy Ngo has been beaten up twice by people with Antifa, and Nick Shirley has been threatened. Well, the Citizen Journalist of the Year was awarded, and it was awarded to Nick Shirley. I'll tell you who else I met last night was Adam Sosnick. You may know that name from the PDB show on Valuetainment. Adam is sort of PDB's sidekick. He's actually a founder of the show and has been with Patrick Bet David, or Pat David Bet. Oh, what is it? Bet David, Patrick Bet David. So it's PBD. I reverse numbers and letters all the time. No wonder I had a hard time getting out of high school, but I made it. And Patrick Bet David and Adam Sosnick founded that channel together. Adam was a delightful guy. He's got a good-looking girlfriend too. Maybe his wife. I'm not sure. I didn't flirt. I knew better. My wife was there. Adam was there. I was a good boy, but I thought about it. And anyway, Adam and Nick had a moment that I caught on film right after Nick had gotten the award. You can watch the footage.
People what's happening, and we were rewarded for the value we bring to people as far
James
as
O'Keefe nominated, was it 6 of you guys?
Yes.
Big winner right here, though. It's like, if you follow the Grammys, you can follow the Oscars, the Emmys, for citizen journalism, this is the guy. The man, Nick. Congrats.
So Nick and Adam both have committed to come on The Truth. I hope to line up interviews with them in the not too distant future. This guy, Nick Shirley, he is 23 years old. His mom goes with him and does a lot of the filming. He's just a neat guy. He's young and he's mature beyond his age. He is not frivolous at all. I tried and didn't really succeed in making him laugh. He's a very serious young man, but is obviously committed to his craft. And he travels all over the United States and really the world. He's been to CCOT in South America, the only journalist to get in. I asked him, how did you do it? And he said, well, I was just maintained a polite, persistent request with the powers that be, and they finally let me in. There were also a number of whistleblowers at the benefit last night, and I was fortunate to have a front row seat. There were probably 800 people in the audience, and it was just a delightful night. I live in West Palm. I've spent a lot of time on the island of Palm Beach. Helen is a wonderful cook. She's just forgotten how to find the kitchen. So we go out just about every night, and I got to tell you, of all the restaurants in Palm Beach and the clubs in Palm Beach, I got to say that Mar-a-Lago probably has the best food of any of them. We had a delightful dinner and a wonderful program. But just to give you a snippet of what James O'Keefe does, here is one of the videos that he played last night and a recent video that he put up on YouTube. And I tell you, I watched this thing. I've watched it 4 or 5 times now. And getting prep for the show today, it just makes my blood boil. But here you go.
Trackers do like 80%.
80%.
Wow. I don't know if we want to share that they do all the work.
No, never. So we do about 20% of the work.
20%.
Right?
These government contractors like ATI taking advantage of their special minority-owned status.
And I tell you, pass-throughs are a great thing as well. So a lot of our subcontractors bid on contracts that were perfect in their industry, but because they weren't Native American, they wouldn't win it. So we bid on it for them. They became our sub, and it's an automatic win because you're Native American status. Isn't that exciting? Right?
So
A lot of people don't know that.
I don't think anybody knows that.
Yeah.
We want to keep it that way.
That's right. That's
We
right.
want to keep it
Exactly.
a secret.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
Taking the money in, subcontracting much of the work out.
I sit back, collect my percentage, and they do the work.
Correct. Yeah, they're doing most of the work.
To get the contracts, get the money, act as a pass-through, and it's the taxpayer who gets screwed over. Was there some rules or something like you were telling me about, like that you have to report 51%?
51%.
51.
On paper. Correct.
Right.
As long as it's on paper.
As long as it's on
Picture
paper.
51%. You're good to go. And remember, there's no competition because you're Native American.
That makes my skin crawl. It makes my blood boil. Here you have a woman who admits that she's gaming the system, that she hires a subcontractor to do the work for a grant that her organization, I think it's, what was it, Anthony, ATI? They submit a bid to do this work. Then they just subcontract it out, and the subcontractor does the majority of the work. But this woman on camera said that they do virtually none of the work, like 5%. And they collect millions. And it's because they submit the contract with a Native American partner. So there is no competition. We're talking about a contract valued at $100 million. The law requires that they do 50% of the work or more. And you can hear her say in the sting operation that James was conducting that they do less than 10%, and that requirement that they do 51% is just on paper. So as long as you have it on paper, you get away with it. And as James O'Keefe pointed out, only the taxpayer gets screwed. And there were stories, more and more stories. Stories about, I talked to whistleblowers who worked for the Border Patrol, and they said that they were incentivized not to do their job. That actually they could take a certain number of days off and not even show up to work, and that their post would be unmanned, and so that people would just walk in undeterred. You know what they called them? Mayorkas days. You know what Mayorkas days were? A bribe. They were a bribe to keep your mouth shut. And as long as you kept your mouth shut, you could get Mayorkas days, not go to work, and illegals could just flood through the gates with no one to deter them. I'm telling you, folks, you look at the combined sum of what we're dealing with and what we're looking at, and it is a very, very serious world that we live in. And I worry about it. I think about it. I study it. I research it. And the closer I look, the worse it appears. I mean, it's just like, you get too close to the sun, you get really burned up. And that's the position that I'm in right now. I get so hot under the collar studying this stuff and looking at this stuff, I'm not sure that it's healthy. But I do it for one reason, I like to keep my head in the game. For another reason, it allows me to bring you this programming every week. And it is a result of our working to try and bring you good programming and keep you informed. So the government shutdown is now over. The Democrats blaming the Republicans, the Republicans blaming the Democrats. Who do you think is to blame? Who do you think is to blame for the government shutdown? You know, the Republicans voted, I think, 13 or 15 times to reopen the government, and the Democrats all opposed it. So who do you blame for keeping our government shut down for 41 days, I think was the number, the longest shutdown in our nation's history? And it was all political gamesmanship originated by and orchestrated by the Democrats. But who do you blame? I'd like to know. If you're on Getter, put it in the comments right now. If you're on the other social media venues, put it in the comments. I'd like to know, what do you think? Well, I wonder what our listeners think. Now, if you've made up your mind, whether you've registered your opinion or not, I was shocked to learn that 45% of Americans blame the Republicans. 33% blame the Democrats. Well, right after the government reopened and everybody starts posturing, the Democrats have a document dump of tens of thousands of files from the Epstein files. And there are three files in particular, three memos in particular, that do shed light on Donald Trump's knowledge. One is from, let me find the oldest one first. It's from 2011. It's an email between Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. And Ghislaine Maxwell says, she opens this email by saying, this is in response to Epstein's email to her first. I want you to realize that dog that hasn't barked is Trump. A victim who is redacted spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned, police chief, etc. I'm 75% there. I don't know what that means. And then Ghislaine Maxwell says, I've been thinking about that. Well, I don't know what that proves. I mean, I just don't know what to make of that. It would appear that Donald Trump spent time at Jeffrey Epstein's house prior to 2011 with a victim. But the timing of this is extraordinary. It was released right after the government opened. So the Republicans respond that that's just a diversion to get to move the focus off the Democrats and onto Donald Trump. That memo is the only memo, the only hint of evidence that links anything untoward between Trump and Epstein. I mean, I don't like it. I wish I hadn't, I can't unsee it. I wish I could, because I want this president to succeed. And I don't know what else might be hiding. I've been consistently said that I don't think that Trump had involvement with any of the victims. This memo would tend to argue against that. It happened 15 years ago at least. That does not, I'm not excited about it. Is it true? Is it factual? Is this memo authentic, or has it been doctored? I don't know the answer to that either. The fact of the matter is, nothing surprises me these days. And very little that I see do I necessarily believe on the first pass. We are so deep into the Epstein files now. His trial was nearly a decade ago. The conversation continues to rage in the social media and on searches. Yet it's the only memo I've ever seen that comes close, or the only evidence I've ever seen that comes close to in any way implicating Donald Trump. But along with that memo came two others, and they were from Michael Wolff. Now, this is a self-described Trump hater. He is an avowed Trump hater. He has got the Trump hate syndrome. What do we call it, Anthony? Trump derangement syndrome. I don't think that it's Trump derangement. I think it's just pure derangement. Michael Wolff, he's a journalist. He writes for Vanity Fair and the New York Magazine. He wrote Jeffrey Epstein back in 2015, and he's discussing with Epstein how to respond and handle the Donald Trump matter in connection with Epstein. So Michael Wolff writes Epstein and says, I hear CNN is planning to ask Trump tonight about his relationship with you, either on air or in the scrum afterwards. Now, this is a journalist collaborating with a known pedophile, a convicted pedophile, who is believed to have ties to some of the most powerful people in our country. Don't forget the Clintons. Bill Clinton was his buddy. He traveled with him as much or more than anybody else to Epstein Island. And then Wolff goes on to say, Epstein responds, if we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be? This is Epstein asking Michael Wolff, what answer should we give Donald Trump so that he can respond if he's asked a question? Now, this is what this little snake writes back. I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the house, then that gives you valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you. Or if it really looks like you could win, you could save him generating a debt. Of course, it is possible that, when asked, he'll say Jeffrey is a great guy and has gotten a raw deal and is a victim of political correctness, which is to be outlawed in the Trump regime. So here are two guys, Jeffrey Epstein and Michael Weiss, collaborating on how to handle, how to respond to how Trump should respond to a question that is posed to him after a presidential debate way back in 2015. I don't know what to make of all this. But what I do know is that the timing is extraordinary. They've had these for years. Now they drag them out at this opportune time. The only thing I know that Trump has consistently and repeatedly said, and news commentators are saying, oh, I told you so. He knew Jeffrey Epstein was bad. He knew that Jeffrey Epstein had young girls that he would bring to his houses. Well, they're saying that this is proof positive that Donald Trump knew it. Hell, everybody in America that cared to watch or look knew it, including the most powerful among us. But so I don't think that it's a crime to know it. Everybody knew it. Everybody who had any remote knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein. I really, I'm like I said, I'm down here in South Florida. Have never been to Jeffrey Epstein's house. I've never seen Jeffrey Epstein. He did not have any prominence around town that I'm aware of, until his conviction for pedophilia and child trafficking occurred, when he got a slap on the wrist, and the prosecutor was told to go easy on him because he was intelligence. Yet this keeps coming up, and I'd like to know, what do you think? Write to me, johngordontruth@gmail.com. I'd love to hear your perspective on it. Clearly, I'm trying to get my head around it. I have to stay honest to the truth. This email saying that Trump spent hours with a victim, I think is not good. It's very damning to Trump. Will it disrupt his presidency? Will it derail his presidency? I don't think so, because it's the only evidence that I have seen that remotely suggests that Trump had anything to do with Trump or Epstein's victims. Now, he knew Epstein. They were both prominent in New York. Everybody in high society in New York knew Donald Trump. They also knew Jeffrey Epstein. So no foul there. But he is denied ever having had any relations with any of Epstein's girls. This seems to contradict that. But is it authentic? Is it real? I don't know. I would say that it has the appearance of being legit, but the fact of the matter is we just don't know. Well, the other thing we don't know is who killed Charlie Kirk. And folks, I'm telling you, the circumstances surrounding Charlie's murder are beyond sketchy. There are so many warning signs and so many things that aren't right that it really does cause you to, gives you pause and makes you wonder just what is going on. Candace Owens has been hot on the trail on this. She's probably done the best reporting of any citizen journalist on it. She has made no secret of the fact that she thinks that Israel was somehow involved. She hasn't implicated them directly, but there was an Israeli jet that took off from Salt Lake, which is a short drive from the University of Utah, something Valley College. What is it? That college where Charlie was assassinated. I'm not sure it's important, except what is important is it has very strong ties to the CIA. There are known CIA, I don't know how to describe them. I wouldn't say they're assets. I wouldn't say they're CIA officers, but people with strong ties to the CIA are on the faculty at that Utah State College. And one of them, one of their names mysteriously disappeared from the college's website a day after Charlie was assassinated. So that makes you wonder, what's going on. There's so much sketchy stuff. It's hard to get your hands around it. But there was a guy in the crowd that was clearly giving signals, baseball type signals that you would see in a baseball game, where he goes up and touches his hat, then touches his ear, and then bam, the assassination occurs. Meanwhile, there are videos of two security guards that are right there next to Charlie just before the shot was fired, both looking at their watch. Now that means nothing except when you add it all together. But let's look at these clips. Let's look at the guards checking. Which one do you got first, Anthony? We got the guards checking their watches. Okay, let's watch that.
That was great. Really appreciate it. And we're going to be here for a couple hours.
Okay, did you catch that? Show you in slow motion. The security guy in the blue and Charlie's bodyguard in the tent looked at their watch simultaneously, which my guess would be they received some kind of alert that I'm guessing Charlie's entire security crew got.
Yeah, I don't know. It could be coincidence, although under the circumstances, I don't really believe in coincidences any longer. But then you couple that with the guy. Do we have the guy with the baseball cap? Let's look at him now.
All right, and the next, of course, is the baseball cap signals. We've seen this. Tip of the cap, looks over. And I mean, that is a split second before Charlie's hit that we see this.
It looks sketchy to me, folks. I don't know how you deny that something is not right. And Flagler, what are you doing, buddy? My favorite friend just came onto the set. He thinks it's mealtime. Flagler, I'm kind of working right now, buddy. You're going to have to scoot along. All right, y'all behave. So, but you've got the Israeli jet taking off from Salt Lake shortly after, about less than an hour after the assassination, and makes a beeline back to Israel. We've got the FlightAware data that shows that. Then you have the guy with the baseball cap making the signals. Then you've got the guards looking at their watch, proximate to just right before the shots went out. And then you've got the behavior of people that were close to Charlie. And when I say close, I mean they were in close proximity to him, but they were also close to him in terms of their relationship. Like Mikey McCoy, he was Charlie's chief of staff. Now, his behavior is nothing short of bizarre. Let's look at that clip and watch him. If you're on the radio, we're watching Charlie. He's under the tent. He's engaging with someone who was asking him questions about trans. As you know, that was a question that was being posed. And then there were these Turning Point USA people, principally Mikey McCoy, whose response to their boss being assassinated just feet from them is inexplicable. Here are the clips. Let's watch.
Mikey was behind the tent when Charlie got shot, and Mikey, in less than a second, does something that I find to be quite strange. He puts his phone to his ear and he begins a conversation. So we're going to watch that clip in its entirety. Mark is going to bring it in. So we decided to slow this clip down, and we're going to watch this clip slow down so you can see that it is exactly 834 milliseconds from the time that you hear the shot. That is how long it takes for Mikey McCoy to put the phone to his ear. Now, why is that precise timing so important? Because there's no dialing. Mikey didn't have time to dial, okay? You can't dial and put your phone to an ear in 0.834 seconds. The next time that you're going to see Mikey McCoy, as we just showed you, is in just under 2.5 seconds on the other side of the tent. He's on a phone call. So we can track Mikey, but let's watch the clip again in milliseconds so you really grasp how quickly this transpires. So when this clip was brought, there we go. We're tracking that.
I just don't know. I mean, what kind of a reaction would you have if your good friend and your boss was shot and killed right in front of you? Would you get on the phone and just kind of casually walk off and walk around behind the tent? And he wasn't ducking for cover, okay? He wasn't panicking or freaking out. It looked like there was a higher priority that he was tending to. I don't know. It just doesn't add up. It just does not make sense. And then you've got this guy who also worked for Turning Point USA. Right after Charlie was shot, he jumps up on a kind of a concrete pillar and positions himself so he can film Charlie being carried off into the SUV. And then you've got the matter of Charlie being taken to a hospital that did not have a trauma center, yet they virtually passed a hospital with a known very good trauma center. So it's just really upsetting to me that we have lost someone like Charlie Kirk, who was brilliant, who was courageous, who was having an impact, who was influencing young people to seek develop their spiritual self. And he talked about his faith a lot. In fact, he said he wanted to be remembered because of his faith. I mean, and people on the left are cheering that he is dead and celebrating his assassination. I mean, what is the matter with these people? I don't care if it was my worst enemy. I would not wish that kind of harm to a fellow human being. Yet they are. I mean, this is not, Jeffrey Dahmer they're celebrating the death of, or Charles Manson. This is someone who was trying to spread God's word and also help young people understand and find truth, because they're being brainwashed by professors in their colleges that preach these leftist Marxist doctrines. And so Charlie was trying to bring balance to that, and he was. And tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people then joined Turning Point. And President Trump said the other day that Charlie was being remembered as just this wonderful, great guy. And he said, but Charlie could be pretty tough. And I knew Charlie. I've had a lot of encounters with him. Sometimes he was real friendly and other times not so much. I know he was a real good salesman. If he thought you were a potential donor, I don't mean to be mean. I'm just telling you my experience, just like Trump did, I'm not speaking ill of the dead. I'm just saying everything you've heard about Charlie is not true. He had an edge to him. Actually, I was in the Palm Beach Republican Party Club meeting last spring when Charlie came and spoke to us, and someone in the audience asked him a question that I thought was very benign, and Charlie just jumped all over him, just crawled all over him, said, tell me your name. Why are you asking that question? Just very aggressive. And I've seen Charlie in reels where he did that with college students too. So look, let's just make sure that we're being real. He was not a perfect person. I don't know any perfect people, not since Jesus left the earth. So he's not expected to be perfect. But just keep it real. I mean, and Charlie he was brilliant. I would just say that he didn't suffer fools lightly, and I would also say that he did not treat everybody with respect unless he thought he could get a big check out of them. And that's just my observations and firsthand experience. I'm not venting, I'm just being honest with our listeners. But all that aside, I don't even know why I went there. The fact of the matter is, I went there because Trump went there. But it resonated with me. The fact of the matter is, a horrible national tragedy occurred on that college campus on September the 10th, 2025. It will forever be memorialized in our nation's history, and I want the truth. I want the answers. And where is Kash Patel and Dan Bongino? Why are they not giving us the answers? I have to be honest with you. I think they're not giving us the answers because of the same reason that we're not getting the answers on the Epstein files. Excuse me, I had to bark at the dogs. I think for the same reason. I think Mossad and Israel fingerprints are all over it. And the way Netanyahu has so glowingly talked about Charlie, yet his supporters were all up in arms and all over Charlie in the days and weeks leading up to his assassination, because Charlie was speaking the truth and talking about genocide in Gaza, and he felt that Israel was being too aggressive towards Gaza. Personally, I'm torn on that. I mean, I've tried to sort out in my mind what a peaceful resolution would look like. And the fact of the matter is that you cannot have peace with someone who doesn't want to make peace. And that's exactly what we've got, I think, from Hamas. And it's not the Palestinian people, it's the people that have seized their government and purport to represent them. And I don't think they represent them at all, because they're bringing horrible living conditions to Gaza. And at the same time, we're also being fed a very fake, false narrative that these people have no food and they have no help, no aid coming to them. Yet I saw a video just this morning of a whole yard stockpiled full of water and food. So it's just so hard to get real and truthful information. I think both sides are telling their own one side of the story and are propagandizing a lot of the information that comes out of it. But I digress. The fact of the matter is that Charlie was not distancing himself from his support for Israel. He was asking questions as a humanitarian, and I think rightfully so. And we know that he received horrible, severe backlash as a result of that. So we're going to stay on it. Thank you, Candace. Thank you, Nate Cornacchia, who is the guy that we had on that clip that was talking about the baseball signals. He's another YouTuber. And, you know, I've been thinking a lot about, you know, here we are, November the 15th. Charlie was assassinated barely over 2 months ago, and we know so much about Tyler Robinson, his whereabouts that day, his outfit changes. They've shown us a lot of his footsteps, but not all of them. They very curiously do not show him shooting Charlie from the rooftop, even though we've got video of him on the rooftop before and after. You know they've got it. Why are we not seeing it? That's another fact. And then you see Tyler Robinson running across the roof after the shot, and he goes from a dark portion of the roof to a white portion of the roof. His shadow is, you can see his shadow on the dark portion, but curiously, the moment he steps onto the white portion, his shadow disappears. Well, his shadow should be more prominent on the white portion of the roof than the dark portion of the roof. It looks like it has been doctored. And then the other thing that is so mysterious is that there were web searches from Israel days and weeks before Charlie's assassination, searching the coordinates of where they found the gun in the woods, searching for the name of this judge that has been assigned to the case, searching the doctor in the emergency room that operated on Charlie when he was brought in. I mean, that's just creepy. You can't explain that. That's not coincidence. And those searches came from Israel. And it wasn't some discrete IP address, I'm told. It was hard factual knowledge that these searches were conducted in Israel before Charlie's assassination. So that makes you think, it makes me think that it was very well planned. It was very well thought out. And why has our government suppressed the truth, and why are they not letting us see the evidence? And I'm sick of it. This federal government, folks, is rotten to its core. And I frankly do not want to be a member of a society that operates with that kind of immorality. And so what are my choices? I can leave the country, which I don't have any intentions of doing because I love America. And I love my relatives and my friends and the opportunities that I've had and the living conditions that my wife and I enjoy in our more senior years. So no, I don't want to leave, but I don't want to live under a corrupt, demonic government. And I think that's too broad of an indictment of anybody and everybody who works in our federal government. I'm speaking about the bad people in our government, the people that engage in the kind of contracting that we brought to you earlier in this broadcast, showing the lady that is abusing the minority contracting opportunities that she has because she's black and because Native Americans have because they're Indian. Those programs were put in place to help bring them up, and they're taking complete and full advantage and breaking the federal law in the process. So all of these things that James O'Keefe has pointed out, all of his videos, he's got a list of videos that he's done that highlight his work And let me just go find the list. It's a very long, impressive list. By the way, Charlie's proud to tell you that his programs and his videos are not brought to you by Pfizer. He has gone full frontal attack on Pfizer. He did a video on Prince Andrew, and Prince Andrew's royal family titles were stripped. He did an investigation into the Small Business Administration and into that ATI government contract that ended up being canceled. He did a expose on Mitchell Rosses, an FBI official that was accused of wrongdoing, and that individual was fired and escorted out of the FBI offices. Daniel Choi, the U.S. State Department representative, was fired by President Trump after James's expose. The State Department launched new vetting processes after O'Keefe had an expose into the State Department. State Farm, Byron Cohen, a White House advisor, Brandon Wright, DHS official, ESPN producer Byron Bertrand, Nicholas Tuza from the Department of War branch chief. All these people were fired after James O'Keefe did exposés. I'm not talking about James O'Keefe now. What I'm talking about is fraud and corruption in our federal government and violence perpetrated against American citizens who are guilty of nothing. I don't know how many people died in the collapse of Building 7, but there's not a human being alive that knows anything about steel, architecture, and engineering who thinks that Building 7 came down because of dust that hit it from the Twin Towers or debris. It's a farce. We're being lied to. And why? If Building 7 was a controlled demolition, then what else is true? And you know what else? They can't find any plane parts at the Pentagon. Whatever hit the Pentagon disintegrated into a million pieces, into little tiny fragments. And you know where those fragments are? They're in Asia, because all of the evidence from the World Trade Center, Building 7, and the Pentagon were packed up, loaded up, and shipped to China. What else do you need to know? What else do we need to know? So why am I going to Dallas? I'm going to Dallas, ladies and gentlemen, because I have been on a campaign to both learn and in turn educate our listeners. Because I feel that John F. Kennedy's assassination is a seminal moment in our nation's history that reflects directly on the deep state and shows you proof positive how bad it is and how bad it has been for 63 years, the day we lost our innocence. So if you agree with me and Roger Stone and David Talbot and Douglas, and Mark Lane, all these people, over 4,000 books have been written about the Kennedy assassination. We require no more documents. We require no more evidence. I think that I can conclude with 99% certainty that Johnson orchestrated it, Dulles carried it out, and Hoover covered it up. And they were conspiratorialists. You know why? Because there was a grand conspiracy. Just like with Building 7. Do you know that with Building 7, the BBC reported that Building 7 collapsed 30 minutes before it happened? What more do we need to know, folks? Help us get this country back. And, I keep thinking, well, what's the rationalization? Maybe I'm being naive. Maybe I'm just this dumb redneck from Macon, Georgia, who just doesn't really understand. Maybe I just don't understand the finer nuances of national security. Okay. Riddle me this. What possible justification was there for killing the 35th democratically elected president of the United States? You know what the justification is? Johnson was under investigation. He was about to be thrown under the bus. Kennedy was going to dump him from the ticket. Allen Dulles had been fired from the CIA by Kennedy. They hated each other. And J. Edgar Hoover had all kind of dirt on both Jack Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy because they slept with Marilyn Monroe. And so they hated each other. It was a perfectly dysfunctional federal government at the highest levels. So they all have some blame, but nothing justified the killing of John Kennedy. So how do you rationalize that to the people that did it? And how do you rationalize not speaking out about it if you were alive and in the administration or in the FBI or in government at the time that happened? You have particular knowledge, and your silence makes you complicit, including all the members of the media that have lied to us about it for 63 years because you were being paid. Is that the level of your moral conviction? Is that the level of your ethics? I had a journalist, semi-journalist, pseudo-journalist, tell me that he could never be bribed. Yet the paper he works for has continued the narrative. And there is no other explanation other than bribery. They're on the take. They're on the take. The whole frickin' media. New York Times, Washington Post, Cox Enterprises, Politico, go down the list. They're all on the take. So much for journalistic integrity. So much for journalistic integrity. Mr. Weiss, who was coaching Jeffrey Epstein on how to undermine Trump. So much for journalistic integrity. You know what it is? It's a crock. And we've been sold it for decades. There is no journalistic integrity among the mainstream media of which I am aware. There are notable exceptions, I should hasten to add, but I don't know. Well, Fox, I mean, a lot of people, including Donald Trump, get down on Fox. I think they do a remarkable job. I mean, Maria Bartiromo, I mean, she calls it like she sees it. Gutfeld, I mean, he doesn't pull any punches. Sean Hannity, well, he's kind of Trump's boy. He parrots the Trump line, but Trump gets mad at Rupert Murdoch. I think it mainly stems back to the 2020 election and the fact that they called Arizona way early, and they cowered away from talking about electioneering, and I think they cowered away because they were afraid, and justifiably so. They run a business. And they got socked with a $1 billion judgment against them for defaming Dominion, the voting computer company, which has now, by the way, been sold to a new party. We don't know what the future of Dominion is and whether they will straighten out the weaknesses in the voting machines. The voting computers, as one of our listeners emphasizes every time we talk about it, because they are computers. They're not machines. Machines, you can't really, I mean, I think his point is well taken. A strictly mechanical instrument can't really be manipulated. I mean, it's just, you can break it. You can maybe warp it or deform it, but you can't really manipulate it. But you sure as hell can manipulate a computer. So I think his point is well taken. Today's broadcast is brought to you by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy. They are a restaurant services company located right there in Atlanta, Georgia, serving North Georgia. They service grease traps, collect waste vegetable oil, clean that God forbid forsaken vent hood that you got to keep clean and free of grease lest it catch on fire. They sanitize the front of the house and the back of the house. They've been in business for going on 20 years now. They have a great who's who of Atlanta in the restaurant business, a sterling reputation. If you're tired of slow, dirty, poor customer service from your vendor, give PCRenergy.com a close look. Give them a call. They've got a customer service line that's open throughout most of the all of the waking hours of the day, just a short period of time from 11 p.m. until 6 a.m. that they're offline. But the rest of the time, you can talk to a live person. If they are busy and can't get to your call, they'll call you right back. They just have a great company, give wonderful service, and a stellar reputation. We're coming to you today on the John Fredericks Media Network. We are also on CDM.press. They take our feed and redistribute it across their outlets. We are also right now live on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, X, and Getter. Come on over there, subscribe, like us if you do. Interact with us. We got 6,000 people on Getter and growing right now. We also have podcasts on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. And of course, you can follow us on Facebook, X, Twitter, formerly Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Getter, and Truth Social. Visit us on johngordon.tv for all of our past episodes. And of course, I always like it when you write me. You can write me love letters. You can write me hate letters. I'll respond respectfully, and we can try and sort it out. It's a two-way street. Play nice, you get nice. JohnGordonTruth@gmail.com. But I don't mind you disagreeing with me. I honestly don't mind it. Actually, I invite it because I want to get it right. And if I've missed something or overlooked something or misinterpreted, let me know. I'll read it and I'll consider your thoughts and opinions. Today we have some terrific guests. Ed Bartlett, he's the founder of SAVE, Stop Abusive and Violent Environments. Who could oppose that? We're going to talk about gender propaganda, equal rights for men, and the UN Women's Agenda. We got to get those scales rebalanced. Eric Eggers is going to be here. He's a researcher and a reporter with Peter Schweizer. He is Vice President of Research at the Government Accountability Institute. I am a huge fan of Peter Schweizer. He's written several books, two of which we've talked to him about on this very show, Red Handed and Blood Money. And he is a wonderful author who has really done a deep dive into the communist China and our ties to it, including people at the highest level in our government who are intertwined with China. So that is going to be a great interview. I would encourage you to stick with us right here on the John Fredericks Radio Network. And don't forget, tune in to us live next Saturday from 12 to 2 as we retrace those fatal steps of John Fitzgerald Kennedy live in Dallas and in Dealey Plaza at 12:30 next Saturday. All right. We've told you the truth today. Let's get right to our first interview with Ed Bartlett. Many of our listeners may remember Gloria Steinem. She championed women's causes in the 70s. But today I've met my new best friend, Edward Bartlett, and he's sticking up for men, for dudes all across the globe. Edward, welcome to The Truth.
Thank you, John. Great to see you.
What caused you to champion men's rights? Do we really need somebody to stick up for us?
Well, John, have you heard the word patriarchy or oppressive patriarchy? Have you heard those terms?
Sure. I'm not eminently familiar with them, but I'm vaguely acquainted with those terms.
Yeah, well, those are words that feminists throw around all the time to claim that women are oppressed by an all-pervasive, all-powerful patriarchy. So we actually decided to look at the actual numbers, the actual data. And so we looked at, well, are men living longer lives than women or shorter lives? Well, turns out men are dying 5 years sooner than women. Then we looked at enrollments in colleges. Globally, men are less likely to be in college than women. Then we looked at homelessness. 72% of the homeless are men. And actually, we identified 12 areas where men are lagging behind women, usually by quite a big distance, a big gap. So if there is such a thing as the patriarchy, those patriarchs are doing a pretty bad job looking out for the interests of men and boys.
Well, but do we need looking after? I mean, I've really never even stopped to think that I'm being really persecuted or put down or marginalized until really I started reading material that you sent me in preparation for this interview. And then I'm saying, gosh, there are some people that are being pretty rough on us guys. You cite Nancy Mace, who I actually like, but evidently she's got a real thing about a real grudge against men. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I know, who's not particularly nice to me. I've never understood why. But now that you've pointed out that she rants about guys, maybe that's it. And Harriet Hagman, who I also know, who I gave money to when she ran for Congress against that wonderful Liz Cheney. I don't care what she says about dudes. She beat Liz Cheney. That's good enough for me. But
Right.
So what is it? I mean, I just remember what was the guy's name from the LA riots? Rodney. What was his name?
Was it Rodney King?
Rodney King. Can't we just all get along?
Yeah. Well, again, I just want to emphasize we've looked at the numbers. These numbers all come from the World Health Organization or other global, respected groups. So it really is mind-boggling when you think, yeah, it turns out that men are lagging behind women in 12 different areas, and I've only mentioned 3 out of the 12. So you mentioned Nancy Mace. Yeah. Well, Nancy Mace does not like men very much, and I'll give you one example. I could give several examples of Nancy Mace. But several years ago, they held a hearing on persons who go missing or they disappear. All right, and the hearing was focusing on what they call persons of color, POC, and it turns out. So we're talking about blacks and Hispanics and Indians. It turns out, according to the FBI, there are a lot more male persons who go missing or lost for whatever reason, according to the FBI. But this hearing that Nancy Mace, she was a co chair on this hearing, they only wanted to talk about females, right? Now, doesn't that strike you as a little bit odd, a little bit biased, a little bit prejudiced, that they would not even mention the fact that black men are more likely to go missing compared to black women?
That is actually very surprising to me. I never see a missing persons flyer for a male unless it's some kid that left a bar at 2 a.m. and that was the last time he was seen.
Right.
I've seen those flyers, but if a woman goes missing, it is pervasive on the news now that you call my attention to it.
You're exactly right. Again, FBI says there are far more men that go missing than women.
So who are nabbing these men?
Yeah, so I've actually done a deep dive into this issue, and it turns out that the majority of missing persons turn out to be adolescents who are runaways. In other words, they, for whatever reason, they just can't deal with mom or dad, and they just want to leave. Okay, so they do. They get up and leave. They don't tell parents where they're going. They just kind of disappear. And in a week or two, hey, they come back. They stay with a friend, and then the friend kicks them out. So they come back home, and they're no longer missing. So that's where a large percentage, I believe about half of all missing persons, are the teenage runaways.
That reminds me of a story. I have a buddy who ran away from home when he was 12 or 13, and he was gone for a day or two. He finally got overcome with guilt and was starting to worry that his parents would be worrying. So he went to his pastor, who then gave him a ride home. When they rang the doorbell and they embraced with his dad, and everybody was cheery. The pastor left, and the dad turned to him and said, "Son, don't you ever go over my head like that again."
Right. But the story we're talking about illustrates one of the favorite techniques of feminists, which is to promote a sense of hysteria about an issue. They dramatically misrepresent the facts, and then they promote a sense of hysteria, like, oh, all these kids, male or female, are somehow being abducted, kidnapped, being killed. That's the impression they like to give. Of course, that's not truthful.
So do we know how many male and female, both sexes, go missing each year?
Yeah. The FBI has really very detailed statistics. Anybody can go there. I think it's under missing, FBI missing, and anybody can find it. And you can look for any year you want to. They break it down by race, by Hispanic, American Indian. And so it's a very detailed database. So there's really no debate about the facts.
Just in broad brush terms, how many people are we talking about?
It's been several years since I did a deep dive, but it's like, each year I think we're talking about, in the thousands or maybe 10,000 in the United States. Yeah.
You feel so strongly about this that you've created a 501c3 called SAVE, Stop Abusive and Violent Environments. What are your objectives? What motivated you to start at number one and number two? What are the goals of SAVE?
Well, John, we formed SAVE a number of years ago during the during the Obama administration, when everybody was freaking out about the alleged epidemic of sexual assault on college campuses. And you may remember that. You remember the make-believe incident at University of Virginia?
I do. That was a travesty of justice, if there ever has been one.
You remember that? Well, that was all part of that hysteria that was going on at that point in time. So a policy, it was called a Dear Colleague letter. That was the official name for it. Came out in 2011, and it was so utterly unfair to accuse male students, because it took away their due process rights, like the presumption of innocence. So that was where we started out a number of years ago, was to, assure due process for students who had been accused of sexual misconduct.
You also have focused on the United Nations and claimed that this infection has actually invaded the UN, and they have a branch or something or other called UN Women.
That's right, John. So UN Women was formed around 2010. So it's a relatively new agency within the United Nations, and they say that their objective is gender equality. Well, again, we've done a deep dive. We've gone through their website. And let me just give you one example: domestic violence. We know the CDC says this domestic violence is an equal opportunity problem. Women are just as likely to be perpetrators of domestic violence as men. This is truly an equal opportunity problem. But go to the website of UN Women, and this is true globally, not just in the U.S., right? Go to the website of UN Women and enter the words male victim domestic violence. There'll be nothing, absolutely nothing, not even a single mention of this idea. It's all about female victims of domestic violence. So they're creating this hysteria and this misinformation in order to push for legislation.
Well, you've also indicated that these UN women, in cases of real disasters, like in Afghanistan and a hurricane in the Caribbean, that they put out a warning or an admonition to please prioritize saving women and girls.
Right.
I mean, how can that be the official policy of any self-respecting organization? I mean, little girls matter, but little boys don't. So you prioritize little girls. I mean, that's just, I mean, I want to prioritize everybody, but women and children, whatever happened to that one?
Right. Well, I mean, let's be just utterly candid here, John. The UN Women is not telling the truth. They're lying, and we're not the only ones that are saying that. There was actually a report issued just last week, done by a fellow named John Nuzzo, Nuzzo. Anybody can look on the website Nuzzo and see the analysis. He analyzed a whole month worth of tweets from UN Women, and actually, I'll quote his conclusion. Quote: UN Women's main message was that women around the world are experiencing widespread victimizations, including unequal rights, and that gender equality can be achieved only if women are given more money, greater political power, and further protections from perceived physical and non-physical harms. So that's obviously not truthful. We've already talked about these 12 areas of male disadvantage. UN Women will never even acknowledge even a single one of these areas of male disadvantage.
Well, this is all very stunning to me. I mean, I've been aware of the women's movement for decades.
Me too.
I open talking about Gloria Steinem, but I've never really felt vulnerable or that I was being taken for granted or abused. There, you have uncovered some statistics that really did surprise me. Commitment to marriage. Men are more likely than women to agree that married people will find happiness. 38% of men versus 22% of women. Now, my wife would be a focus group of one that would argue that point because she's very happy, and I make sure of it. Parental aspirations. Men want children more than women, 57 to 45. Intimate partner violence. Men are more likely than women to be victims of domestic violence. That I had absolutely no earthly idea of. And then husbands initiate 37% of divorces, while women initiate 69% of divorces.
Right.
These are all revelations to me. Where did this data come from, and can we rely on it being accurate?
They are all accurate. They are all reliable. Those facts come from one of our press releases that we wanted to put out, because this is one of the ways feminists create this hysteria, is they create these negative stereotypes, and then they vilify men as being abusers, as being deadbeats, as being scoundrels, as not dependable, as poor fathers, deadbeat. I mean, the list of epithets is really astonishing. But again, look at the actual numbers. And maybe the most oppressive is that if you look at which person is more likely to cheat, sexually on their partner, it turns out women are more likely to be the cheaters than men. Now, I'm willing to bet you've never heard that before. Again, that speaks to the stereotypes that are put out there.
Well, I wish some of those women would come and hit on me just to aggrandize my already overinflated ego, but it just never happened. So I don't know where these women are. But
Yeah.
so what? How are we going to change this, Ed? What is SAVE going to do about it?
Well, the most important thing that John is to simply get word out with our press releases, through radio interviews like our conversation right now. We also do lobbying on Capitol Hill. Last week, we had actually a large group of people meeting with staffers to talk about exactly these issues. So it's a process. You mentioned earlier about our early beginnings. I talked about due process on college campuses. That's one of our major victories. We succeeded in getting a new due process regulation enacted in 2020. That was during the first Trump administration. That was largely as a result of our efforts. So we have that victory. Another victory is that you may have heard that former President Biden introduced a new Title IX regulation that wanted to change the definition of sex to include gender identity. Did you hear about that?
No, but I just, I try and filter the noise. And so when I hear malarkey like that, I just put it in the category of noise.
I'm kind of the same way.
I'm good with their men and their women. And then there are other people who, I do believe that there is a spectrum of, if you put masculinity on one end and femininity on the other, I think we all know people, men who are more in touch with their feminine side, or whatever that saying goes. And I think that there's some women that I really wouldn't want to run into in a bar if they were drunk and we got into a tussle, because they'd probably whoop my butt. So, I do think there are iterations and variations, but at some point you just got to kind of refer to common sense and say, look,
you have to refer to common sense.
Look at your private parts. And for me, that's good enough to define you male or female.
Well, exactly. But again, feminists often defy common sense and defy science. So this Biden regulation, it was a Title IX regulation, which is the federal law that's designed to stop sex discrimination in schools. That regulation said, hey, we're going to redefine sex to include gender identity. Well, we were strongly opposed to that. And we pulled together a coalition of 240 organizations, and we succeeded in blocking it. So that's another one of our success stories.
But Ed, I think you'd have to acknowledge that. Is it okay to call you Ed or Edward?
Sure. Yeah.
Isn't it fair to acknowledge that women still have their hands full in a lot of context, particularly you got governors of states, for God's sakes, putting tampons in men bathrooms. What is that about? But then, it flips the other way too, because they want men to be able to use women's bathrooms, and they want men to be able to compete in women's sports and use the same locker room. I think that is textbook certification for mental infirmity. I think those people should automatically don't collect $500, do not pass go straight to the crazy house.
Yeah, this is textbook insanity. There's no doubt about it. It violates science. It violates common sense. It's just craziness.
Well, and it violates those women who've worked their entire lives to become Olympic athletes in swimming or weightlifting or track.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they're competing against some dude.
It's absolutely unfair. And again, UN Women is one of the most strongest proponents of this gender transgender ideology. And we're actually, our upcoming press release is going to call them out specifically on that issue, because it does It defies common sense. It defies science. It's obviously not fair to women.
Well, I just think that, Rodney King was right. Can't we just all get along? And like, what was her name? The comedian that is no longer, they booted her because she was really mean to her staff. The gal that danced all the time. What's her name? Ellen DeGeneres. Yeah. She says, be kind to each other. Well, it turned out she wasn't kind to anybody, especially the people that work for her. But I mean, George Bush, the elder, really, one of the few things that he said that I actually agreed with or trusted him to on was, we need a kinder, gentler nation. That sounds very aspirational to me today. I don't think we've made progress. I think we've gone backwards. How do we how do we get
We absolutely have gone backwards. We're seeing greater animosity, greater name calling, uh, and we see it, especially young feminist women are especially aggressive in their vilification of men. And, that's a long discussion, but I think everybody has seen that in their own lives or seen it on the internet.
Well, it's interesting. It has been a fascinating conversation. You have enlightened me. It's a subject I'd never really consciously thought about. I mean, somewhere in the back of my mind, those thoughts occurred to me, but I've never really felt particularly abused. I mean, if I go back and think about women who have been uncharitable or disrespectful to me, they are in the vast, vast minority. Actually, Anthony and I have been trying to figure out how we can get more women to turn into our broadcast. Our broadcast inexplicably skews 80% men and 20% female. And I would have thought it would have been much the opposite, because most dudes are watching football Saturday between noon and 2 when we come on the air. But I'm
Right.
really, the YouTube audience is amazing. That's where the only real demographics we can glean, but it's 80% men and 20% female, and
Interesting.
pretty much broadly scattered throughout the age groups from 20 to 60 and above.
Right.
We did want to try and attract more women. I'm not sure this is the right formula for it, though, Ed. I think we just had a lot of women tune out.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you want to attract young, angry feminists. I don't
Yes.
think that would be, I don't think that would be an asset to your operation. And it's really very, very interesting to look at what's going on with young feminist women. For example, their mental health is really in the garbage. 56% of young liberal women, of course, a liberal woman is always going to be a feminist. 56% say that they have been told by a healthcare provider that they have a mental health problem. Think about that. I mean, you're talking about depression, you're talking about paranoia, you're talking about, cognitive disorders, so forth. 56%, that's a huge percentage.
That's a staggering number. And that one that I was not aware of, I've been kind of making light of some of this during our conversation today, but that's a sobering statistic. And in those cases, I would want to have pity on those young women and hope that they can get better.
Yeah, absolutely. They need help.
Yeah, you start thinking better about yourself, you'll think better about your fellow man or woman.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is that they have been brainwashed by the feminist ideology that women are the victims of the oppressive patriarchy, and you and I have trouble kind of grasping that. Think about the effect of that belief on your daily life and on your daily interactions with other people. So it really is stunning to think about that.
Yeah, I agree. Well, this has been an enlightening conversation and one I've thoroughly enjoyed. I've learned a lot this morning. Thank you for coming on with us, Ed Bartlett. He is the founder of SAVE, and he's trying to stop aggressive and violent activity towards men and boys. And So I think that is probably a good cause. And I'm glad we got you on our side, Ed. And put us on your mailing list, if you would, johngordontruth@gmail.com. And our listeners and viewers today, you can also express your opinion. If we've got some angry women out there that want to weigh in on this, just write johngordontruth@gmail.com. We'll read it and we'll respond to you. Probably not in kind, however. Thank you, Ed. Have a great rest of your day.
Hey, great to chat with you, John. Be in touch.
Our audience knows that government accountability, or maybe it's the lack thereof, is a continuing theme on The Truth. Well, I discovered a gentleman named Eric Eggers. He actually is vice president of the Government Accountability Institute with Peter Schweizer. Eric, welcome to The Truth.
Hey, John, it's great to see you again.
Yeah, likewise. I enjoyed meeting you when you were in West Palm, and y'all are due for another trip down here. But let me just lose all credibility I have with you now. I have been a student of the Kennedy assassination since 1963. I have tried to consciously push conspiracy theories out of my psyche. And the harder I push, the stronger they seem to return back in to my consciousness. You know, I've just really, seriously, I've very consciously pushed back on being open to any conspiracies surrounding the World Trade Center collapse and that horrible day in our country's history. And other things, you know, Epstein, I was sort of late to the party on. I just didn't want to cloud my brain with another twist and turn story and conspiracy filled narratives. But then, you know, they just keep coming back. I think they continue to boil to the surface. And you really, at some point, just have to say, okay, let me see what's there. And to me, if you look at Building 7 and the way that building imploded, you look at what's happened around Epstein, and then most recently Charlie Kirk's assassination, it has led me to the belief that our federal government, particularly within the alphabet and intelligence agencies, are simply rotten to their core. Is there any, first of all, do you agree? And is there any chance of reforming and getting our country back to a moral high ground?
I mean, John, that's a tough pill to swallow, because to believe kind of even incrementally anything like what you just said, you'd have to believe that the intelligence agencies were capable of something like fabricating intelligence to support one political candidate over another, and allowing themselves to be used when that didn't work. Let's say, for example, hypothetically in 2016, and let's say they hypothetically fabricated intelligence to try to keep Donald Trump from being elected. And then when that didn't work, then you'd have to believe, however far-fetched this may sound, that they would then, these intelligence agencies, be willing to work, again, at cross purposes, they actively undermine the candidacy of this hypothetical president, in this case, Donald Trump, and actively suppress with like big tech information that might have swung the election. Like, let's say information about Hunter Biden's business dealings, in which at the time when Joe Biden was vice president. No, unfortunately, John, we have a lot of evidence to suggest that sometimes the government does stuff that we absolutely should not be okay with. And I think it's interesting to kind of to consider some of the very big questions you're asking. I don't know anything about the World Trade Center 7. I don't know anything about I know very little about the JFK assassination, although for many years I have often thought it was not a coincidence. It seemed too much of a coincidence, let's say, that LBJ was on the Senate Intelligence Committee, and you had Lee Harvey Oswald had been a CIA asset. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, and then he becomes president, and there's a lot of things happening there. But again, that's from afar. We actually have had Gerald Posner on our podcast on a number of times, who wrote the book Case Closed, and you know, he wants to push back, but I think he pushes back on the JFK assassination conspiracy stuff on technicalities, not on like, hey, what about these threads and strands? I think they're worth further investigation. All that to say, I don't blame people like yourself for thinking things you just think about when you look at what we actually do know and can prove, because what we just talked about is like those things did happen. The Clinton campaign knew they had an issue. They knew they were perceived to be too friendly to Vladimir Putin. So they fabricated with their campaign attorney and friendly intelligence assets the Russiagate dossier. And then they were able to, these same intelligence assets were able to keep very relevant, very real information, again, connected to one of our investigations about Hunter Biden's business dealings, from being considered in the mainstream. And I think it would have swung the election in 2020. And then 4 years later, not saying this was the intelligence agencies, but we saw some forces convince the most powerful man in the country, the sitting president of the United States, Joe Biden, to give up his reelection pursuit against his will and replace him with someone who received 0 votes during a Democrat primary process, all the while telling us that his opponent, Donald Trump, was the threat to democracy. So the American people have been so consistently lied to for the last decade plus. I don't blame them for wondering what else they haven't been told the truth about.
Well, I mean, we could spend the next hour talking about the things that I outlined and add on top of that the Hunter Biden laptop, Russia, the 2020 election, and then Charlie Kirk's assassination, as I alluded to. I mean, I think that we're building a very convincing case and body of evidence that there is serious demonic activity going on within our federal government. And I mean, I can't think of any justification for assassinating the 35th president of the United States. I don't know how the people that were involved would possibly rationalize that. Unlike yourself, I have spent the last 60 years studying the Kennedy assassination. For one thing, you would not be that old, so I've got a head start on you, but I was home in the 4th grade and saw the assassination unfold on live television in the moment after he was shot. And I stayed glued to the TV for the next 4 days with my mom and dad huddled around our family TV. I saw John raise the American flag in the rotunda looking for his dad. I saw him salute the unmanned or the one horse carriage carrying the casket. I've visited Arlington Cemetery and the Eternal Flame, and I have retraced the motorcade in Dallas every step. I've gone to Oswald's rooming house where J.D. Tippit was shot, to the theater, and I've read the books. And there's just no doubt in my mind today that Johnson orchestrated it, that Dulles carried it out, and Hoover covered it up, because Johnson, as Roger Stone writes in his book, The Case Against LBJ, The Men Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ, LBJ was about to be indicted for fraudulent and corrupt business activities with Billy Saul's Estes in Texas. And 2 days before Kennedy was shot, he told Evelyn Lincoln, his secretary, that he was going to remove Johnson from the ticket in '64. And then Johnson's mistress said that you can watch her on YouTube, said that he came out of a meeting with very powerful people and said, after tomorrow, those SOBs will never embarrass me again. And then we have Dorothy Kilgallen, who went to Dallas and interviewed, and I'll stop after this, Jack Ruby, and came home and said, I'm going to blow the cover off the Kennedy investigation. Be sure to read the paper this week. And she woke up dead the next morning from an overdose of barbiturates. Her hairdresser, personal assistant, best friend said she never took drugs. She was happy. She would not have killed herself. And, oh yeah, her notebook was gone. So, I mean, it goes on and on and on. And Building 7, we're told, collapsed because of the foundation becoming compromised from the collapse of the Twin Towers. But it was 8 hours after Building 2 collapsed. And Kirk Weldon is really the best source on this. He was a former congressman from Pennsylvania. He's also was a fire captain, said it was a controlled demolition. You just look at how the building imploded. It obviously is like all the buildings that we've seen that are demolished to make way for the new skyscraper. It just fell pancaked right into itself into the ground. I.e., there's just no way that was, and every architect and engineer who's looked at it has said it was a controlled implosion. So I'll stop. I mean, I could ramble on for another hour. I won't do that to you. But my point is that these things are really disturbing to me. And this Russia thing, we have proof positive that it was, as you said, it was a hoax. It was made up. It was a lie. And it cost our country 3 years of the Trump administration and $40 million of the Mueller investigation. And for what? Somebody's greed and wanting political advantage.
Well, and I'll give you one more, John. I mean, just a subject that I do know a decent amount about. I wrote a book on it. I wrote a book in 2018 called Fraud: How the Left Plans to Steal the Next Election. And then the 2020 election happened. And in my book, I just said, hey, look, here are some examples of how voter fraud has occurred that are indisputable. I mean, talk about Kennedy, JFK, like, it's widely acknowledged that the mafia helped JFK win that election in 1960 over Richard Nixon because of the mob and their effort to turn out dead votes or voters on behalf of dead people in Chicago.
Well, in the primary in Virginia, I mean, he was.
Yeah, so it's baked into our lore, right? But and then I said, hey, look, and by the way, the bipartisan commission has acknowledged the least secure way to cast ballots is via the mail or absentee ballots. And then COVID happened, and we conducted that election in 2020 with the most ballots ever cast in the least secure method ever. And you saw all the different anomalies in terms of the vote totals change in Atlanta and Detroit and elsewhere. And then we were told that it was the most secure and fair election in our country's history. And anybody that dared raise questions about it was deplatformed or censored.
Straight out of the words of Brad Raffensperger, Secretary of State of Georgia.
Yeah. And some people got arrested, as you're aware. So
Trump just pardoned them.
So all that to say, like, I'm very familiar with the tension that exists between wanting to get the truth out and then forces that exist that try to say that truth is not the truth, but it's some wild conspiracy. And that is, unfortunately, I think why programs like yours. I do a podcast with Peter Schweizer called The Drill Down with Peter Schweizer. And, it's one of the things we try to do is just tell people the truth, give them facts, and let them draw their own conclusions.
You guys have just done phenomenal work. I've read both books, Red Handed and Blood Money, and the influence, the undue influence of China in this country, and the evidence that we see that, I mean, General Robert Spalding says that we are at war with China as we speak, and he calls it the stealth war, and that never a shot will be fired. And I think it's really scary stuff. Maybe the world has always been this way, and that we've just never realized how bad it really is until the advent of the internet and our ability to communicate directly between one another and have all the information at our fingertips, which we were deprived of for the majority of my lifetime until the internet arose.
Yeah. By the way, it's not just General Spalding, it's China themselves. I mean, China has, like, part of the whole premise of that book is that we have information, we have a document, a report written by Chinese military officials in which it's unrestricted warfare. And they have said there's a number of different ways we're going to be waging war on the United States, fentanyl being one of them, chemical poisoning. And obviously, as we documented, the narco terrorists coming from Mexico are using Chinese technology. They're actually going through some Chinese linked banks to launder money. And then obviously the chemicals for fentanyl, the precursor, comes from China. And that's been one of the things the Trump administration was holding China's feet to the fire on, even over some of these tariff negotiations. So, we've been fortunate to see, I think, when you provide facts that are as damning as the fact patterns are in that story and others, that actually real reform does happen. That's actually what we exist to do here at the Government Accountability Institute.
Well, I really appreciate the work that you all are doing. Now, 2020, I have a little bit of knowledge on because I worked with the legal team in Georgia, Bob Shealy, Charles Bundren, Preston Halliburton, who brought a case against the Fulton Board of Elections. Judge Brian Amaro ruled that they had made a prima facie case and ordered the absentee ballots be unsealed. Well, Judge Amaro, because he was such a courageous fellow, 9 months later, reversed himself and threw the case out based on standing. but the Georgia Supreme Court unanimously ruled that the electors and the petitioners did in fact have standing. So his prior order still exists. Now the case is mired in a court in Fulton County. Previously, all the Fulton County judges recused themselves, but this one partisan hack has retained the case. He also dismissed the case against David Perdue, the former senator from Georgia, based on standing. That case was likewise reversed by the Supreme Court, and he's just sitting on the case. Well, guess what? And this is very exciting to me. The U.S. Department of Justice has sent a letter to the Fulton County, the steward of those ballots, and has ordered that they be turned over. And I think the deadline is like today or tomorrow. I mean, the 15 days is about to run. Do you have any insight into this? Are we going to get to see those ballots? And if we do, I think that's where the smoking gun resides.
But think about what you just said. Let's imagine that does happen. Is that going to overturn the election of 2020?
I'm not interested in relitigating 2020. What I'm interested in is prevent it from ever happening again. And yes, I do want retribution. I want the people that did that to be held accountable, to do a perp walk. And it may lead all the way to Brad Raffensperger and maybe Brian Kemp. And that wouldn't disappoint me either, because Kemp has not been genuine with the people of Georgia about the election. And Chris Carr, the Attorney General, who I ran against in 2022, has done absolutely nothing except enter a consent decree with the Perkins Coie law firm and favoring Stacey Abrams in her lawsuit against the state of Georgia. So I have very little regard for either of those three gentlemen.
Well, and I'm not here to tell you that regard level should change, but what I'm here to tell you, and by the Perkins Coie phrase you used, I mean, they're connected to Mark Elias, who was Hillary campaign's campaign attorney, and is one of the single reasons why election vulnerabilities exist as widespread as they do. And I did a podcast yesterday in which his name came up. Actually, it's funny, he was talking to Jasmine Crockett, and Jasmine Crockett was saying that now that somebody else owns Dominion, that she doesn't want them to be used. And the irony, of course, is, well, wait a minute. Now, if you're now suggesting that because of an ownership change, the election machines might matter, when we literally saw people have to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in fines and face jail time for raising questions about the legality and integrity of the 2020 election.
Well, Fox News being told to pay $1 billion to Dominion for defamation.
But the point I'm making, John, is just to say that, like, the problem with voter fraud is that the remedy is often impossible, because it's the easiest thing in the world to get away with, because that you cannot connect the ballots to the actual voter. So it's impossible to prove who it is that is the one that cast these ballots. And we've talked often, and there's a lot of people will tell you, there's this window between when you can register to vote and the election administrators don't have time to vet it. And so that's actually what I'm encouraged by, just moving forward. If this happens, if there is a smoking gun that emerges in Fulton County, what I hope it does is add credibility to the larger conversation that I think Donald Trump's been trying to have, honestly, since he got elected to the first term, but even more so now in the second term. Harmeet Dillon with the Department of Justice, as the Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division, she's been great. They're trying to get these voter rolls from these different states. They're suing them to try to get them. And I think it's got to start with looking at the names on the voter rolls and clean those things up. I heard yesterday Tom Fitton has sued. They've got voter rolls. They think they've identified 2 million names that shouldn't be on there. And one of the facts I have in my book, John, is, when you identify names that shouldn't be on the voter rolls because these people are dead or they've moved or they're in prison, those things get exploited so easily. The city of New York sent undercover detectives to try to cast ballots on behalf of 63 different people whose names should not have been on the voter rolls in a New York City municipal election. They were successful in casting ballots on behalf of those people 61 different times. So, the names matter, the voter rolls matter. The Supreme Court has cited statistics that said 1 in 8 voter registrations in this country can be wrong. So I think that whatever happened in the past, and I think you and I probably agree about what did happen, or some of what happened. It's, to me, I'm more focused on what happens moving forward, and I think that can, the Trump administration can change in a positive way the nature of election integrity in this country moving forward for generations to come if they stay strong and courageous. And I do believe they want to do that.
Well, my suspicion is that it all emanates from the deep state. And that is what I think is badly in need of reform. And we posted a video a month ago titled "Donald Trump is Deconstructing the Deep State One Brick at a Time." And I have said that I think the part one of the story is Russia, Russia, Russia. I think part two of the story is going to be the 2020 election. Then we'll move on to January the 6th, which was a complete farce, and it was theater orchestrated by Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats, and then a farcical investigation conducted by the January 6th Commission that was not lawfully appointed, then leading up to Butler and then Charlie Kirk. I think once the American people finally get the truth, and I think Donald Trump is in the process of giving it to the American people, they will become so outraged and so upset about what they see that it will cause the legislators to reform the permanent Washington and eradicate the cancer, I hope, that I think infects our federal government.
Hey, it's an idea. It's not a bad one. I think that you've seen lots of steps taken in that direction, and I would say if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be the current president. So I agree with you.
So where do we go from here? How do you feel like we get our country back on the right track in stopping this nonsense that deprive us really of our values and our integrity? I think we lack the moral authority to lead, because it's not a secret to our allies or our enemies what our country has done.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would just say I think that what we try to do at our nonprofit, the Government Accountability Institute, is we just try to tell people the truth. And I think it's what you're trying to do. It's probably why your program is named The Truth. We just try to give people information. I think that's how you fight disinformation. You fight the lies. You just have to say, no, I'm not going to be afraid. I'm going to stand up and tell you what's true, no matter what consequences we might face. I think that actually, to me, is the thing I was most encouraged by with the election of Donald Trump in 2024, is people were like, after COVID and after summer of George Floyd and after just all the different things, and like, okay, we're going to solve the environment by giving like billions of dollars to green energy technology. It doesn't exist yet. Like there were so many things the American people were lied to about. And what I think that the election of Donald Trump in 2024 represented is, you know what? We're smarter than that, because you don't control the information anymore. There's podcasts like yours. There's programs like the ones I'm involved in. And, Twitter exists now in a way that doesn't actively suppress information, but hopefully helps promote information that the mainstream media previously wouldn't have allowed you to have. And so, just think all the information you just kind of rattled off about the different stories that you care about. Like that's not stuff you got on this nightly news with Dan Rather. Like that stuff you can now find on the internet because information has been democratized. And so I think that's a very positive thing. And I think it's up to programs like yours and mine to continue to try to tell people the truth and trust that they will make their own decision, and remind people what the values of this country are. The values of this country are, the podcast we just did, and then kind of like, end with this, but the podcast we just did this week is about home ownership, and Donald Trump talked about the 50-year mortgage, but what he's really trying to do is make home ownership more affordable, and it's bucking back against the trend of how many fewer people are buying homes and owning homes. And that's because there are large forces at work that want us to be a nation and a world where you own nothing and are happy. There's a essay that was written in the World Economic Forum literally called that, "You will own nothing and be happy." And the name of the article was "Welcome to 2030." And so, it's important to remind people that we are a nation that believes in individual rights, individual property rights. We did an episode a couple weeks ago about the SNAP program and how that's become rife with fraud. And it's like, well, wait, just to remember, like, it's good to help people that need it. I don't know that we meant for there to be 40 million plus people on food assistance that cost $100 billion a year. Because remember, this country started off by people wanting to provide for themselves and grow their own food and do their own thing. Like we are an entrepreneurial spirit that founded this country. And I think just like programs like yours and mine to remind people of who we are and why we exist in the first place is probably among the more important things you can do.
Well, you're up in Tallahassee. It's colder up there today than I bet it is down here in West Palm Beach. But we've got a governor's race coming up just next year. Byron Donalds has got President Trump's endorsement. Governor DeSantis's wife is making moves and sounds like she's considering running. And then you have a friend of yours, Jay Collins, who's the current lieutenant governor, who is, I guess, exploring the possibility of running. Maybe he's all in. I'm not sure. How do you make book on the Florida governorship?
Well, listen, if you could see my Hard Rock betting app, you would not be asking me to speculate on making book on anything, John. I'll just tell you. That's, I make money doing several different things. Gambling is not one of them. But I would just say that, Byron Donalds has come out and has got the endorsement of Donald Trump. Of course, Ron DeSantis was able to become governor because he had the endorsement of Donald Trump. He was able to beat somebody who was considered the front runner at the time, Adam Putnam. And so many people were shocked when DeSantis was able to win that primary handily, by the way, for people who forget. I don't know. I would not be surprised if the current lieutenant governor, Jay Collins, whose backstory is, I think, quite inspirational as a military veteran, was injured in the line of duty and over time chose to have his own leg amputated, and then requalified as an active duty, as an amputee, but requalified active duty special forces, wins the Wounded Warrior Invictus Games, like runs marathons, almost sets a world record for marathon time as somebody. So his story is quite inspirational. And then his track record as a legislator and as somebody who worked in the business or nonprofit community is legitimate. And so I don't know. I think it'll be good. What did we learn from the Joe Biden thing? I think coronations are bad, and so I think the Democrat primary or the Democratic process exists for a reason. The primary process exists for a reason. And I think it'll be a good conversation about what issues matter to Floridians, because I do think the threat is real. We've had more people than ever come to Florida from not Florida, from blue states. And I think, we want to keep Florida free and not make Florida more like Washington. We want to make Washington more like Florida, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important that we find somebody that does a good job of that.
We welcome those people to our state. We just don't welcome their politics. So come to Florida and enjoy it, but leave it alone because you came here because you like it. Don't change it. We don't want you to change it, especially when it comes to our politics. So you're up there in Tallahassee. Are you on the ground and you actively engaged in state government and Florida politics?
Not really. No. I mean, we focus primarily on the federal level here at the Government Accountability Institute. We happen to be located in Tallahassee, but that's just byproduct of happenstance. Peter Schweizer has been here for a long time. And, I was one of his first hires when we started this organization in the fall of 2012. And so it's been a fun ride, and we've been able to make a big difference. And, Steve Bannon helped co-found our organization, and, he obviously joined the Trump administration and has been a significant voice for freedom. And so we just want to continue to educate people and, push back against the forces of cronyism and corruption in our federal government.
Well, keep doing that good work. Jay Collins is lieutenant governor. Does he preside over the state Senate as the lieutenant governor does in Georgia or not?
John, I didn't know I was going to have a civics exam here, buddy.
I'm sorry.
That's a great question. I don't think so, because in the state legislature, the Speaker of the House and the Senate President are very powerful entities, much more so than the lieutenant governor, I believe.
Yeah, and they're really at odds with the governor right now. They are pretty much declared all-out war between the governor and both chambers of the legislature.
No, it's true, and it's odd because Ron DeSantis has done a great job, has a great track record. So it's an odd choice to sort of run counter to what he's doing. But hey, everybody's got to make their own choices,
Well, Eric, thank you for coming on The Truth today. My best to Peter Schweizer. Tell him I said hello, and it's time for him to come back on The Truth. And you're certainly welcome here anytime. We've had a great conversation, and let's keep fighting to help keep this country or get it back on the high ground. That's what I'd like to see.
John, the last time I saw you, you were doing an episode with Peter Schweizer from the corner of this swanky event in Palm Beach. So I'm sorry to be slumming it with you just via this thing. Maybe next time we can do it in person. But it's great to see you.
Well, I would love that.
Keep up the good work, and congratulations on your success. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your weekend.